here, and I was gonna do stop video. All right, so my name's Jose Montoya, and I'm from STAAND. I'll be speaking about the health disparity of the Latinx community as it relates to tobacco. First, I want to start out by thanking the El Dorado Tobacco Prevention Coalition for giving me the opportunity to speak on this issue. It's been great to be part of this coalition. I know great big things are happening and are to come in this coalition. So this is great. So what I'd like to do is start out by talking a little bit about myself, and I just wanted to show that when I was a young adult or a youth, I started advocating and my community. And what happened is I was part of a young youth organization called MECHA, and what we would do is we would advocate and self-advocate for social issues and so on, social justice issues. But that's me there. I'm not sure if you could, that's me right there. So we organized and we pretty much learned about how self-empowerment happens and so on. So I do have a little bit of background on that form of justice. I also did a lot of social justice in college. So it's pretty cool to come back and into this world and advocacy and see this come through again. So, what I'm going to be talking about is the tobacco related health disparities, and I'm going to focus on tobacco health disparities, tobacco companies targeting the Latinx community, and at the end, I just want to call to action, right? Because it's good to learn about all this stuff, but at the end, what are we going to do about it? And that's something that I feel that sometimes we need to have that discussion and work with each other to work on something for the overall end game strategy. Earlier, we read about the health disparities and it was defined, but I kind of want to go over it again. It's a health, and I got this from the LULAC, which is League of United Latin American Organization. And this is something that, how they defined it. It says, a health disparity is a difference in, sorry, like way over. I apologize for my health, for my issues here, technical issues. Okay, a health disparity is a difference in the health and that's closely linked with social and economic disadvantages. Health disparities adversely affect groups of people who have consistently experienced social and economic obstacles to health and or factors that influence health based on their ethnic group, gender, age disabilities, gender identity, and geographic location or other characteristics. Health disparities don't only harm the individuals and communities they experience them, they hurt the whole as a nation. And as someone that grew up in a rural area, we had a lot of health disparities, specifically in rural areas, because there just isn't the infrastructure to back what we need as an individual. So I wanted to talk about the story of inequities, and what I did is I put kind of put the HTTP on there. But what it does is it explains the unfairness and deficits created by a product, which is tobacco, that causes underlying health issues in which COVID-19 has managed to take advantage of. And we hear this all the time, that the only people being affected by COVID are the people that have underlying health issues. So I think tobacco is a big backing of that. I've attached an illustration, a picture of a human puppet with strings attached. We know that big tobacco likes to pay front groups to become their speaking advocates, especially when there's strategies to confront their efforts in marketing and so on. But we know that Big Tobacco gave about $75,000 to the Hispanic American Chamber of Commerce to mail out 92,000 mailers to businesses to protest tobacco tax increases, which is like pennies of what they spend on marketing per year. And I'll go more into that in depth in a little bit. On this slide, I have attached the Hispanic Latino prevalence. A prevalence is the proportion of a population who have a specific characteristic in a given time period. A prevalence rate is the total number of existing smokers divided by the total population. That's pretty much how they get the quantified data on this. But if you look at the prevalence here, the Hispanic Latino is 10.2%. The general population is 10.7%. So it's pretty crazy, like how you know, the Hispanic Latino population is smoking in larger quantities. If you look at the number 3 here, it's, I mean, adult tobacco use in e-cigarettes is 19.0% in the Hispanic Latino community versus the general population, which is 18.8%. I thought that was interesting and a good highlight to show in this story of inequity. So I have my son Emiliano here. I have a picture of him, and he loves to point out tobacco butts, especially everywhere we go. In fact, that's how I got into tobacco control. So he always asks this question: how did it get like this, or how does this happen? You know. So I'm going to go into how did we get there. I wanted to highlight and I wanted to take the attention to Edward Bernays. Bernays, how many people actually know about this person or have heard of him? Anybody? No? Well, he lived from 1891 to 1995, which was 104 years old. His uncle was Sigmund Freud. So that's a little bit of background, but I'm going to talk about him. The pioneer in public relations, Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was one of the first public relations specialists in the 1920s. He pretty much staged a legendary public event and is still talked to this day in all marketing. I was a marketer for a bank, and they would talk about Edward Bernays all the time. When I came to tobacco control, I was not understanding why nobody was talking about this person. Well, he's somewhat of an esoteric character in history. And I wanted to highlight him because he hired, like, his, like, what he staged in his public publicity event is still being used today in marketing. He hired models to march in the the prominent New York Easter parade, and he got them to pretty much light up a smoke and have a banner proclaiming it's a torch of liberty. Edward Bernays made sure that all the photos would appear worldwide, and he got a lot of notoriety for it, specifically because he got women to smoke, and it made them feel empowered in that smoking. He got them to feel empowered. It was kind of like a cognitive science methodology that he used. Companies still use that appealing marketing tool, and it's a marketing scheme that a lot of companies use, and they look at cognition a lot of times to do this. So I believe that the last speaker, actually, she spoke about this in some of the pictures she showed, which is awesome. The rise of tobacco industry, it's pretty interesting because in the early 1900s, less than 1% of American adults smoked cigarettes. By the 1950s, 50% of American adults were smoking. That's half of the adult population within 50 years. The result, of course, is thereafter social acceptance in smoking. Big Tobacco's marketing strategy, is now a whopping $9.6 billion industry in itself, and that's a year. Big Tobacco spends nearly $1 million every hour marketing their products. This amounts to 25 million each day. That is a staggering number, because if you look at California's educational system, if we were to spend that $9.6 billion in our education system just in itself, I mean, we would be able to pay it for quite a while. I was quantifying it in my head a couple of times while I was creating these slides. But Big Tobacco's legacy projects focused on greed and marketing, and it continued. So how do we know this? How do we know that they were doing all this and they were getting away with the marketing? Well, we know this because tobacco industry, they pretty much, the U.S., a lot of the 45 of the attorney generals sued, and under one of the settlements agreements, they were able to get out all this information. UCSF Truth Documents Industry received under the 1998 Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, had 15 million documents that was given to UCSF for housing, 92 million pages, 8,000 audio-visual items, and 45 separate collections. And there's still more coming. I was just on the last presentation that UCSF gave on the truth documents, and they were talking about how there was still more that were going to come out, and maybe in that batch that comes out, we'll be able to see more of the vaping products that were coming out. So I thought that was good to come out soon. So this is what the truth documents look like, and I've attached the HTTP on top here if you ever want to look at it. But sometimes I like to go on there and just search anything. This time I was searching like Placerville, I was searching like El Dorado, just those areas. And what I came across was a marketing scheme, which I'm going to show here. This marketing scheme was from 1981 from Brown and Williamson, and it was an advertising marketing scheme that was going to be conducted for Northern California. What I was able to see is that in 1981, they highlighted the Hispanic community, and they were looking at the age and how many families lived in Northern California, and so on, and all over California, actually. So they were looking at, like, for instance, right here, the California largest single Hispanic state, 41% versus 34% smokers. So they had, Big Tobacco, actually, they know exactly, probably better than our government, the demographics of each county and state. And I'll keep showing this, but they looked at the who, right? The Hispanics, this is what they're going to market to. They looked at the workforce, how they're laborers, and there's a lot of service workers, 16%. They also went down to the point where they're looking at the 8th grade or less level, which is 38%. If you look at the Latino Hispanic community, it's a young generation. It's a population that's very young. Even in 1981, it was still young. I mean, so this is how their marketing was going to be rolled out. Pretty much, they were going to roll it out, and they were going to look at they were looking at the epistemology of how each household was controlled. This is kind of interesting. 3C. Latin women are always glamorous and in control of the household. I thought that was interesting. I showed that to the wife, and the wife was like, I agree. So how continued. So they were looking at marketing and which newspapers they were going to market to. If you look at number 2 here, magazines, publications, Ring in Espanol, Lowrider magazine. That's a magazine I used to read all the time to look at the cars. Cuvo, I used to read Cuvo all the time when I was growing up. They were looking at billboards and how they were going to advertise in billboards. And they were also looking at messaging in Spanish and security displays. Okay, so all of this was continued, and they pretty much did this for a while, and they were looking at marketing and all the marketing that was going to come out of this. So the marketing potential, which was interesting, was 718,000 packs per year. So if you quantify, so something else that I saw at the end here was which kind of brands they were going to market to Hispanic and Latinos. And these are some quick marketing things that I found online from that time, 1981, but they're in Spanish. So the call to action is just pretty much approaches that can help is monitor tobacco use and prevention policies, protect people from tobacco smoke, offer help to people who want to quit by providing resources like the 1-800-QUIT-NOW, pass TRL policies, make your community colleges smoke-free, build coalitions like this one, and get young adults involved, establish infill smoke-free housing and development policies, and implement the 2035 endgame strategy. So what we did is in the California Health Collaborative and STAAND, we created the Young Adult Coalition, and it's focused on rural communities. Of course, this being one, and I've highlighted that here and just showed this. But one of our wins was Boogie. This young gentleman was able to get Tesla to go smoke-free nationwide. So that's a big win that he was able to facilitate himself, and something that he learned how COVID affected smoking rates. And that's something that he was able to use with his managers and the coalition they built within Tesla. So here's my works cited, and I'll give everything else to Mary to share. But I'm going to stop sharing now and give it back to Mary.
Thank you so much, Jose. That was a very informative presentation. I learned a lot, and with no further ado, I would like to pass